Hey, I'd like to welcome you to another episode of Mission Matters. My name is Adam Torres, and if you'd like to apply to be a guest on the show, just head on over to missionmatters.com and click on Be Our Guest to Apply. All right, so today I have Andrew Chan on the line, and he's founder of Atas VC, and this particular interview is part of our Milken Global Conference series, where we bring you the best of those that attended, of sponsors, of guests, of panelists, speakers, and so much more. So first thing first, Andrew, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, Andrew. So as you know, this is part of our Milken Global series, our Global Conference series. It's one of my favorite conferences of the year. I like to call it my Super Bowl of conferences every year. It kind of sets me up for the year, and I always get great content. So you went to the conference in Beverly Hills. How was it? Tell me about your experience.
I did. It was my second year attending as part of the Young Leader Circle, and the conference for me is just incredible every year, or in the 2 years I've done it, and then I went to the Asia Summit last year as well. It's the quality of the people, both speaking and just generally, that you can find in the hallway is kind of unrivaled by, at least for me, any conference I've ever been to. It's just all of these interesting people from so many different walks of life and so many different sectors, all trying to make the world a better place. And I think that's what makes Milken so amazing.
Wow. Second year now, you're part of the Young Leader Circle, as you mentioned. What keeps you coming back? What keeps you going?
Yeah, for me, it's really the people. It's the people and the connections. You know, it's so random too, where I'll be standing in line waiting for, one session or for a lunchbox or something.
Yeah.
And you'll meet somebody who's a leading expert in their field, whether that's medicine. I met one of the heads of cancer research at NYU last year, or venture capital, private equity. Every now and then you just see people casually wandering around and can pull them over for a chat, like Bill Gurley was randomly wandering. It's the sort of experience you can't really get anywhere else. And it's a great community. Young Leader Circle especially is an incredible group of young people and have become most of my best friends. And so that means a lot to me.
Talk a little bit more about the program and what that entails. What's that all about?
Yeah, so the Young Leader Circle program, it's really geared towards people who are more up and coming in their respective fields and at the leading side. So it's from people ages 25 to 40. It's on every continent at this point. I don't think we have an Antarctica member, so all but one, I should say. And really brings people together both from worlds of, art. So one of the great guys I met this year, his name's Knox. He's a photographer. Art, you have tech, so you have CEOs, startup founders, and then you have finance as well, so bankers, venture capitalists, and it gets a group of, a couple hundred people together and allows us to interface with people who you may or may not meet in a normal everyday setting, but they'll organize separate programming. We do a hike every year, which is one of the things that I look forward to a lot. And we do some stuff outside of the conference too. And so I'm tentatively hoping to be hosting a bar crawl in downtown LA in a couple months, but we'll see about that.
What? I might have to crash that. I'm located in downtown LA. So
you are very welcome to join up for that one. I'd love to have you guys out there.
Oh, that's hilarious. That's great. You went to the Asia one you mentioned. It's one of the things I've been looking to do is kind of move over to that market some too. Is that one in Singapore? I don't remember. I think it's in Singapore. Am I off on that?
Yeah, so it's based in Singapore. They also have a program that runs, which is an investor summit in Hong Kong that I didn't go to last year. It's a bit smaller, but still a similar quality of people. Especially the content is really incredible. It's very diverse. They had the sons of Edmund Hillary and Tenzin Norgay speaking this year. That was a fascinating session I would have never anticipated. And it's still the same quality of conversations. And you get a much more focused, view of the Asia landscape. And especially for me as an American investor, you don't necessarily always have that window. And so it was really helpful on that front for me.
Yeah, it's interesting. I got to make it over there one day. That's one on my list of to-dos that is not getting any shorter, we'll say.
It's funny how that works.
Let's switch up a bit here. I want to go further into what you're up to. So Atas VC, talk a little bit more about your firm and what you're up to.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have been building Atas with the idea that I am predominantly focusing on a broad mission around, this is going to sound a little cheesy, but making venture capital actually work for the 99% of people. And so historically throughout my career, what I've been investing in is this intersection of hard technology, so applied robotics, AI, but not AI in a generative sense, and integrated technologies focusing on heavy industry and older industries that venture capitalists often overlook, mining, natural resources, agriculture, manufacturing, construction. These are all spaces I spent a lot of time in. And as I've thought about where I want to drive my career as an investor, it really is into these critical technologies that really affect the lives of your everyday American, not just your people in Silicon Valley. And so that's sort of the genesis and why I decided to start this process.
And on your end, how did you get into the field in general? Like, where'd that begin?
Oh, man. That's one of my favorite funny stories. I never planned to be in venture capital. My degree is in geophysics from Caltech. Out of college, I was originally.
And that makes sense. That exactly makes sense. What do you mean?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Hey, and English literature. I technically have a BS in English too, but that's a separate story.
Even.
So, anyways, yeah. Well, I was at JPL. My college roommate, he came into my apartment one day and said, Andrew, I said, Ari, so dude, you wanted some extra interview practice, right? And I was like, yeah, sure. I mean, always good to interview, working for the government, not that much fun. I said, dude, this woman at this venture capital firm, she's interviewing every Caltech grad who applies for this position. You got to just throw out an application. It's like, all right, I don't know what venture capital is. And he's like, dude, just Google it. You'll be fine. So I Googled it. And turns out you don't actually get asked a lot of questions about venture capital in venture capital interviews. So they asked me what technologies I was interested in. I have a geophysics background. I was really interested in both orbital mining as well as deep sea mining. This is around 2019, 2020. And they ended up hiring me part-time to focus on a mining and mining technology vertical. That led to a deal that I sourced for the firm that they actually didn't get into, but the founders asked me to personally invest. And so I'm sitting there with my little $500 check. It's not like I was making money at the time. I worked for JPL. In a founders fund-led Y Combinator round, that deal ended up getting me a full-time offer. And it's kind of been off to the races since then.
Wow, what a story. And so what do you, as in the VC space right now, whether it's AI or otherwise, like what are you following? What kind of trends?
So as I think about a lot of it, one of the bigger problems that I've seen is this trend towards asset aggregation. And I think you'll see a lot of VCs talking about this. Andreessen's funds are getting bigger and bigger. They're becoming more multi-stage, more private equity-esque, right? And it's this idea that you don't actually have to generate returns via DPI. If you are a GP, you can make a lot of money for yourself just on management fees and generate, very much what at least I would consider disappointing returns, right? A lot of fields may or may not consider that. I think that's a big trend that we're seeing is there's been more and more of these asset aggregation shops popping up. And I think you have to balance that by saying there needs to be a return to true venture and true venture capital, which is taking real risk, not underwriting, B2B software revenue flows, but underwriting technology that may or may not work and being willing to accept the fact that it may or may not work. Because if you do a good job with portfolio construction, you pick the right founders, that's how you drive finding alpha instead of finding beta. So that's been the big thing that I've been focusing on personally. There's a lot of other high-level trends. We're recording this the day after the Windsurf acquisition, which is one of the craziest things I've seen in my career. But all of the above, it's just an interesting time, a lot of capital, a lot of froth, a lot of bad actors, and a lot of people without that much experience deploying, and it leads to a bunch of good headlines at a minimum.
Yeah, I definitely get that. And as we go into, I think this is interesting too, as we go into, second half of the year, we are actually mid-July as we're recording the July 15th. You mentioned one story. What are you following? What are you following right now as you go into the latter half of the year, when you're thinking about your fund and what you're doing?
Yeah, so I think from a broad level of the firm, I have been really focusing on this trend of what I'm calling the SMBification of B2B software. And for me, what that looks like is, I actually spent the last year before I decided to start the process of building the firm doing AI consulting for family offices. And I was never that good of a software engineer in college. I took ML classes. I was pretty bad. After GPT-3, GPT-3.5 came out, I became a very good software engineer. And I made, frankly, a fair bit of money doing software engineering work over the last couple of years. And that trend you're seeing happen broadly, right? It's not just me. People are realizing you don't need a team of 100 engineers to build a product. You can get 10 million, 15 million ARR with a team of 15 people because AI is that good at coding. And so what that leads to for me is this concept that you no longer have to have these massive B2B SaaS organizations. You can have very niche, very vertical focused software applications that may never become a billion-dollar business, right? But if you have 6 people, 7 people, and you guys are making $5-6 million a year, everyone's pretty happy at the end of the day with that outcome, right? And so that's a pretty interesting shift that I actually think creates really strong tailwinds for this idea of deploying in hardware and more complex technologies with real defensibility that doesn't exist on a software layer because software is just becoming commoditized quickly.
What do you think? So speaking of deploying capital, what are some of the challenges you see facing venture capital currently?
Yeah, so I mean, I certainly walked through the asset aggregation side of that too. You know, I think there's also been a bit of a breakdown of trust broadly between founders and entrepreneurs, and then founders, GPs, and LPs, I should say. Where what you're starting to see is entrepreneurs are starting to think maybe they don't need venture capital, right? Maybe they need a lot less dollars. They're starting to avoid that pathway because it just isn't, you know, working the same way that it should. There are a lot of bad actors in VC. There are a lot of people artificially inflating valuations, propping up companies because they don't want to take the markdowns. Again, this all goes back to this like LP fundraising sector that you could say asset aggregation and propping companies up are two sides of the same coin, right? But that's what I'm seeing is like a fair bit of dishonesty, a fair bit of like poor management that really comes off of this wave in 2021 where you saw just everyone and their mother raise a venture capital fund. I'm a believer that a great venture capitalist can come from any background, that you don't need an MBA. You don't need to, frankly, even have gone to college to be a great VC. That said, I do think there are like some experiences and some things like you should know how to run an SUV. You should know what management fees are. You should know how to manage on a board or what happens in the liquidation in a waterfall, right? That I just think are important. And a lot of people forgot the basics, forgot portfolio construction, and that sort of led to where we are now.
Well, Andrew, I'll tell you, man, this has been fun having you on the show today and learning more about what you're up to over at Atas VC. So what do you think are some traits that when it comes to investing in founders, what are some traits that you look for? What do you think makes a good founder?
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, this is an interesting question. And you always think about, like, how do you pick, how do you select, especially anytime you're angel investing or something like that, right? And for deep tech in particular, this is pretty tricky, right? You want somebody who is technically capable of building what they say they can build. But more than anything else, especially with these really complex engineering challenges, you need somebody who can inspire a team of people around them to also believe that they can build something crazy, right? And my archetype for this sort of person, it's this guy, Brogan Van Brogen, who the name alone should give away he's a bit of a character, right? He was the former CTO of Hyperloop. And Brogan is this sort of guy where he will have these crazy ideas and you will hang out with him for 30 minutes and you will believe that whatever you're doing, whether that's building a vacuum sealed, you know, hyperscale train, whether you're, you know, his recent company that I'm a small angel investor in does lunar regolith mining and in-space fuel production, you'll believe him, right? And I think that that's, if there's anything that's a critical trait, it's this fundamental power to storytell and to make others believe in your journey. Because it's not just about raising capital, it's about inspiring your employees to and getting a great team of people behind you to build something truly courageous.
Yeah, I like it. And this goes in line with your thought process of thinking about investing in, you know, in companies and looking to generate more alpha and like having an actual thesis and having something else and not being an aggregator, right? Like that goes to that trait that you're mentioning there. You're looking for pioneers. You're looking for somebody that's moving the needle on an idea or in an industry or sector. Yeah. Yeah,
it's looking for real risk, right? And people who are willing to take real risk and not be afraid of failing on the other side of that.
Yeah. Andrew, this is great. How do people connect with you? If they want to learn more about Atas VC or connect with you on social or otherwise, like how do people connect? How do they keep the conversation going?
Yeah, absolutely. So the best way is obviously to email me. It's just andrew@atas.vc. You know, my inbox is always open. I respond to everything that comes in. And then weirdly enough, recently, the big social media push for me has been TikTok. I'm now officially a micro-influencer on TikTok with my 5,000 followers. And that's just Andrew Chan VC on TikTok.
Oh, that's awesome. And congrats on the TikTok. Come on, man. It's good.
That's so funny.
I know it
I never expected it, you know. I have never seen myself as an influencer. I write a lot. I think there's a lot of value in sharing your thoughts and ideas, but I never thought anyone would care about it. So it's cool to see some of that actually work out. And help some people through that channel.
That's amazing. And for everybody listening, just so you know, we'll definitely put some links in the show notes so you can connect with Andrew. And speaking of the audience, if this is your first time with Mission Matters and you haven't done it yet, hit that subscribe or follow button. This is a daily show. Each and every day we're bringing you new content, new ideas, and hopefully new inspiration to help you along the way in your journey as well. So again, hit that subscribe or follow button. And Andrew, thanks again for coming on the show.
No, thank you so much for having me.